back. I'm Dr. Pete, the Stress Surfer, and the next part of our program is about understanding the 4 elements of the stress surfer. So just like in nature, we have earth, fire, wind and water. For the stress surfers, we have our mindsets, our emotions, our lifestyle choices and our sense of purpose. In this part of our time together, we're going to focus initially in on our mindsets, our attitudes, and how that can either help us ride those challenging waves of life, or having a bad attitude or a faulty mindset can actually create more stress for us and place us at risk of wiping out. Where we have a look at managing the 4 elements of well-being, also known as the stress surfer's 4 elements. These are mindsets, emotions, lifestyle, and purpose. The 4 elements of the stress surfer. To ride the waves of life and become a successful stress surfer, you need to master the 4 elements of well-being. Just as in nature there are the elements of wind, water, earth, and fire, so for stress surfers, there are the elements of mindsets, emotions, lifestyle, and purpose. Mindsets and thoughts are likened to the free and unseen wind. Emotions and feelings are the cause of tears which flow like water. Lifestyle and the daily needs of the body are likened to the stability of the earth. And purpose and passion are like the courage of convictions that burn within us. And so for the stress surfer, are likened to fire. Mastering the 4 elements. Number 1, mindsets. In this section, we're going to look at the first element, mindsets, and particularly focus in on our thinking patterns and what we call the ABCs, as well as increasing our self-awareness of mindsets, understand some common unhealthy and healthy mindsets, and look at the ABCDE technique to change mindsets in stressful situations. Thinking patterns and stress. People are not disturbed by things, but rather by the views which they take of them. Epictetus, Greek philosopher, 1st century AD. I really like this quote. It shows how old the notion is that how we think about things in our mindsets is when it comes to predicting how stressed we are. Another great one to think about, particularly when I'm working with young teenagers, is the movie Gladiator with Russell Crowe. And in Gladiator, at the very beginning, there's another famous Roman philosopher and emperor called Marcus Aurelius. And he too had a view that it wasn't what happened to us, but how we thought about what happened to us that ultimately determined how healthy or unhealthy we became. To get on the road in understanding our mindsets, we first need to understand the concept of self-talk. And self-talk, as you can see in the image in front of you, represents the thoughts and beliefs, the dialogue that goes on in our heads. And often when we're describing this in comics in the newspapers or talking to little children, we do little thought bubbles and we write down things in there that represent people's self-talk. Are you aware of your own self-talk? Take a moment to reflect on what's going on in your mind right now. Once we can understand self-talk, that stream of dialogue in our minds, we can also start to think about times where that's helped us and we've stayed calm, or when we've got upset. And unhealthy thinking typically comprises of a couple of different patterns. Firstly, what we call all or nothing. And that's where when we've got that thinking going on, that self-talk, in response to something that's happened, we either see it as all good or all bad. Black and white thinking is another pattern, very similar. It has to be all one way or all the other. No shades of grey. Another unhealthy thinking pattern is mind reading. And those of us in relationships or with families, we get that certain look from someone and we immediately assume what's going on in their minds. This is unhealthy for two reasons. One, you may be wrong and there may be something entirely different going on, yet you're already reacting. Or two, even if you're right, there's no point getting upset about those sorts of things. Another unhealthy thinking pattern for us to be aware of is overgeneralizing or personalizing. And that is taking a position on something where we think that it's going to happen again and again and again, or it only happens to us. Finally, unhealthy thinking patterns also include catastrophizing, something my children do, and us as grown-ups also do, and that is making out things are going to be much worse than they really are. When we're starting to understand more specifically how to operate on our thinking patterns, how to be the doctor in the operating theatre and be able to change what's going on, we firstly need to understand the ABCs. A is the action or event that happens before we start thinking about it. B is the beliefs and thoughts we're having about the action or event. And C are the emotional consequences, how we feel. As you can see in the diagram, when an action or event such as someone yelling at me occurs, there's at least 3 different beliefs or thought patterns I could have, which would lead to 3 different consequences. Firstly, in response to someone yelling at me, I could think, I'm a failure. It's too hard, I give up. And the emotional consequence you can see there is one of low mood or depression. Another thought pattern when I'm yelled at is, well, who are you to yell at me? They are horrible. And that'll get me angry. Finally, when I'm yelled at, an alternate belief pattern could be for me to think, hey, this is not my problem. I'm not going to get involved. And as you can see, the consequence to that would be to remain calm. The main point of learning about A, B, C is that different thoughts and beliefs will lead to different emotional consequences and outcomes. Mindsets, increasing your awareness. Now that we've understood the ABCs, we need to take one more deeper step to understand mindsets and attitudes. And where do they sit in all that goes on in our minds? As you can see from the diagram, our conscious mind and self-talk is captured in that automatic thoughts layer, the surface of our thinking. And the deepest layer of our thinking is our unconscious mind, our core beliefs. And unconsciousness is just like being asleep. So those things are very buried deep in us and not easily accessed. But as you can see, the middle layer, our subconscious mind, that's where our mindsets and attitudes exist. And with training and skills such as this program, you can learn how to not only understand your mindsets, but how to change them so your conscious mind is healthy and doing the best it can when it has to ride those waves of life. Looking at those attitudes and mindsets in that middle layer, let's stop now and check in on 3 types of unhealthy and healthy mindsets. These are worry versus acceptance, demand versus encourage, and blame versus responsible. Unhealthy mindset number 1, worry. This is about worrying about possible misfortune to yourself or others, either now or in the future. I'm sure you know others and maybe yourself where you don't know what's happening for someone else and you dearly hope that they're safe and well and that bad things aren't happening. Alternatively, you've got some travel plans or some possible difficult conversations in the future and you worry that they'll go wrong. Worry is unhelpful for so many reasons. It produces such negative effects in your stress response and makes you at risk of a wipeout. Let's take a look at what's the healthy alternative to worry. Acceptance. This mindset is about being present in the moment and making the most of each day and the most of each person we're able to speak to. We don't spend our time worrying about the future or regretting the past, or possibly worrying about other people that aren't with us. Instead, we listen closely and enjoy, to the best of our ability, the people we get to interact with and the circumstances we're given each day. Unhealthy mindset's number 2, demand. The mindset of demand is about forcing people to do what you want them to or else. People spend considerable time with an attitude of attempting to control, manipulate, demand, and experience a lot of angry, negative, and hostile emotions when they don't get what they want. The antidote or healthy mindset is encouraging, and that is to adopt an attitude of gently suggesting, motivating, or inspiring people to do what you want and respecting their right to choose their own actions. You are still, of course, allowed, with a mindset of encouragement, to put up boundaries and make your own decisions about what happens when they don't do what you'd like. But it comes from a place of respect and calmness, as opposed to demanding, which comes from a place of disrespect and anger. Our final unhealthy mindset is that of blame. Blame is an attitude and mindset where you blame others for your own reactions, outbursts, and negative moods. It's all their fault. Things would be different if it wasn't for them. This is a very destructive and unhealthy mindset that only increases your negative emotions and makes it harder for you to have good friendships and relationships. The healthy mindset alternative to blame is that of responsibility. Being responsible and taking responsibility for your own reactions, outbursts, and moods. Of course, you're still allowed to be upset when someone does something bad to you, but you will use your own responsible mindset to limit how much you get upset and how much that affects adversely or negatively the people around you. In mastering the elements and looking at mindsets, we want to now take time to explore the ABCDE model, which is about how we change mindsets. A, as we know, is the action or event. B are the thoughts and beliefs, in particular identifying those unhealthy mindsets and attitudes. C are the consequences. Now we want to introduce D, which is about disputing or challenging unhealthy mindsets to find the healthy alternative. And finally, E, a clear alternate mindset which gives us empowerment for living. When we're disputing unhealthy mindsets, that is, when we're caught in the trap of blame, demand, or worry, and we need to get to a healthy mindset such as acceptance, encouragement, or responsibility, we need to ask ourselves some questions. When it comes to those unhealthy mindsets, are they logical ways to think? Is there evidence to prove that that's how it is all the time? Is it practical to have a negative mindset like that? Does it help me? And how realistic is it for me to adopt that mindset when those actions or events have happened? By listening to the thoughts that go on as we dispute or challenge ourselves, we're able to start to see the limitations of those negative mindsets, that it's not practical to worry, to demand, or to blame. It only produces negative emotions. That it's not realistic that because one thing goes wrong, everything will go wrong. And that we can move beyond that to E, or empowering new beliefs, where from worrying, we accept what we can't control and what we don't know and make the most of each day. From demanding to encouraging, we give up trying to force our will on others and gently ask them and show them and model to them how we'd like it to be. And from blaming to being responsible, we move from blaming others for how we feel to taking up responsibility and learning new coping skills, so when we are upset, we minimize it and don't negatively affect people around me. Have a look at the example now, just so we're really clear about what we're talking about when it comes to changing mindsets. We're back at that situation where you're being yelled at. So that's your A. Just to really clarify this, you can see in the box my current stressful mindset. My B in this case would be blame. And the thoughts of blame are, I can't stand working with people who are rude to me. They make me so angry. I hate it. Obviously, we know the C in that one is a fair bit of anger, We then have the D going on, where we're disputing or challenging and saying, how helpful is it to blame? How practical is it, Peter, for you to blame? You don't need to do that. And then, as you can see, written down is the healthy alternative mindset, the E. And that's the mindset of being responsible, which goes along with thoughts that sound like, I don't like it, but I can cope with it. I will not waste my energy being angry. It's not helpful for me or them. Let's do a quick exercise now as we finish off our time on the element of mindsets. And that is to take a look at mindsets in your current wave. You'll see an action plan diagram in front of you. And what we want you to do now is refocus in on that current wave and have a look at each of the areas in the mindsets we've discussed. That is worry and acceptance, demand and encourage, and blame versus responsible. Going down the column, tick which mindsets are relevant to the current wave you're trying to manage. Once you've identified the ones you need to focus on, take a moment to write down some notes about how you'll prevent a wipeout. Welcome back. How did you go with that exercise of your mindsets and your current wave? What you can see on your screen now are the results of my exercise. Firstly, the current wave I'm focusing on is missing my kids, and we've put that in as a big wave. And as you can see on that exercise, I've ticked worry versus acceptance and blame versus responsible as mindsets I need to be aware of to make sure I'm okay. And as you can also see in preventing a wipeout, I've also made a note for myself so that I need to do more accepting in my attitude and make the most of living each day when my kids are with me. When they're not with me, also make the most of that time and not worry about things when they're not around. I also need to avoid the blame game, and if I'm feeling upset or frustrated, I need to take responsibility for that and channel that energy into exercise or work or having fun with the kids when they're around.